When the darkness calls, no one who resides in it denies it. The beast had heard a call that carried through the winds, giving sparkles to all the things of the earth. The creatures of the night hid under rocks and in the soil, and as it spread across them, they screamed and contorted themselves, desperately trying to shake and brush it off. Blinks, a goblin so old that it witnessed three others becoming the Goblin King, an event that only happens once in a generation, an age from grandfather to grandson. At this age, they separate themselves from the horde and move up to the surface world to find new cracks of its own and start its own goblin town. The beast wouldn't waste this opportunity. He laughed how the age of light must be finally withering away. None can stay forever against the darkness. This time the sun will set for the last time. Blinks, come closer. You will be a prince of my lineage and own the authority to rule over my minions of the night, with a reach much further than that of your goblin kings. You must seek out the innocent who's accustomed to my forest. You will find him by the one who frequents the his acquaintance of late. Do not harm a hair on her, or be seen by her eyes, but follow them. They will bring you before the ones. Do not take them lightly. Their powers combined reach further than my fallen father, most beautiful of the Forsaker. Now, how would one so weak as I and feeble be able to defeat such a disgusting force? You will bring 4 sacrifices, 3 horses and a grunt. You should also bring a pig demon for luck. Bring me the horns and earn your place. Far at the edge of the forest, and the realm still a realm that still allows light and warmth in its heart, a girl named of the flower lily, whose beauty was so strong that the animals flooded the kingdom on the day of her birth. She often found her way to the forest. There was no harm for her there. The demons on the shadows don't walk in the light. Plus, one of the kingdom's loyalist servants lived in the area that she loved the most. Her father taught her all the signs of the creeping darkness. A shift in the weather that blocks the sun. Animals disappear from their surroundings. Flowers curl up. Frogs dive into the waters altogether. She wasn't afraid. She'd been through these lands more times than anyone in her father's kingdom, except maybe her friend and her logger husband, who lived there. She pulled the strings to the clothes hanger in front of her friend's house. "Ah, you fleeting fairies!" the friend screamed. She shouted as the princess walked inside the half-carved tree home. This was the best place to test for demons. Her friend was a cook, and the castle or her home was as full of food as the lands. The house was always full of wildlife. She picked up a biscuit and thought to herself, with all this food, no animal would ever leave. Shaking off her oversight, when the baby began to cry, and the voice came in from behind hugging her. When did you arrive, my dear? No, I don't have time. Not today. It's too important a day today. Secretly, she had found a friend, a forest child, who talks to the animals and claims to be learning the language of the flowers. She doubted it highly, but it was unmistakable. She could already speak to most of the birds and squirrels. Today, he said. Yes, she jumped up, wrapping a satchel with some biscuits for him. Today, her brain finished. Today I will learn rabbit. She ran out the door. Beware toadstool rings and old oak trees. Jack, the forest child, said she could never get so small to learn squirrel. If she only knew. Rabbits are nearly unhearable. Contrary to everything you know about rabbits, they talk very slow, say very little, and use as few words as possible. If she couldn't pick up squirrel, it would be impossible to understand a rabbit, even with his help. Today was a very special day, all right, but not for the reason she thought. As she expected, she as he expected, she got there so early. He would have to stall her as long as he could. He did everything he could think of. He sent animals to flood the area. He called the fairy folk to dance in the sun rays, hoping to distract her. He even was forced to turn to the darker things, trying to scare her. Cracking twigs, rustling branches, but he could hear the tone of her voice calling his name. She had reached the limit. He shook his head, looking at the sun for the time. Well, an hour short. It's better than it was when she arrived. He followed her to her favorite spot, on top of a ledge overlooking a deep watering hole. They flirted and played until she sat up to her knees. He who brings me back my ring, I shall marry and make mine forever. Jack's eyes grew large as he heard this, watching the ring fly past his face out of his reach to the waters below. He dived in just as fast. When he emerged, the sun spoke to his eyes. It was time. He took her hand and led her to a quiet stream at the edge of the part of the forest that never sees light. She watched him creep over to behind a rock and peek through some fauna. She held her composure and quietly slipped to his side. The wind shifted, and the sound blew in, a sound she'd never heard before. When her eyes noticed something, a light blurred around two white horses that seemed to split and sparkle in front of them, and flutter the colors behind them as if their tails were making the color float off their resting spots until returning back as if nothing happened. They sung to each other like the whales from the deep oceans. They were born from the first light and only knew love and help. They walked their ways around the world, always finding the places they loved the most. Lily was so overwhelmed by this unusual surprise, she couldn't control herself. Jack was so lost. Lily was already putting her hands out when he noticed she wasn't next to him anymore. No, his eyes cried. A mortal can't touch a unicorn, or to be tainted. Her hand was so close he couldn't watch. He turned his head. Lily didn't touch the unicorn, but it did feel the innocence in her and kissed her hand. No one, not even the unicorn, noticed a poison dart fly out from the branches, blinded by the blurring light. The horses darted away without a noise. Lily turned smiling back, but Jack had disappeared into the forest, looking at her. Was she a sprite? A liar? Could she be trusted? The three monsters on their charged the two horses far into the beyond, until the poison had begun to steal its strength. The unicorn pushed the mare to escape until she reluctantly did. Even with the poison, the horse was strong. The temperature was burning itself alive, and it turned the summer weather to winter snow. This drained even more of its strength, causing its pace to slow. Cautiously, Blink got ahead of the injured myth and killed all three of their horses to ensure their victory, keeping the grunt and the pig for extra assurance. As the unicorn fell, its hold on nature twisted out of control, causing lightning and rain to be tossed every which way. Every step Blink took to the horse, the worse the weather got. It flipped between the seasons and days. Plants grew up and then back down to the seed. Lily, meanwhile, was lost in her emotions, trying to get Jack to understand how wonderful the kiss was, causing him to fall off her favorite ledge. She screamed at Jack, who was pulled under the waters, and all he heard was the unicorn's cries coming from her mouth. Lily watched ice form over the land, becoming Jack's tomb. She ran in fear. This was worse than her worst nightmare. She always expected a sudden rainstorm and had witnessed the eclipse of the day moon and the sun. But this is what a sign was. A demon must be dancing nearby. She grabbed her white dress by the fists and charged to her friend's home. Surely there's a safe place. The animals will definitely still be there. As if an omen or dark curse had strangled her vocal cords, using them against her. When she arrived, the land was desolate and dead. Their beautiful trees sat leafless. Ice-covered snow killed the ground, and the loggers' carved clock, so only the guitar-playing skeleton gyro still remaining unlocked out from its bell-chime home. The sound of electricity zapping from the ground caught her ear. She ran up the stairs and began peeking through the floorboards. A zap kicked the door open as the three walked in. The wind had masked the human scent long ago, but they knew she frequented this place. Blink zapped everything, entranced by his new power. The pig peeked around the father, who was frozen in position changing his baby's diaper. The pig, a demon born of lust, raped the frozen solid infant. Blink zapped him with the Omicron into a shelf on the wall. He then picked up the sulken husk of a frozen ice and threw it at him. The baby shattered into pieces. A beast of a voice boomed in the house. "What are you doing?" That is not some mere for you to for that is not some mere for your treachery. You have already failed me once. Bring me the Omicron before you fail me again. Lily watched them. They walked outside and picked up change from under the snow and began dragging the horse from under the new powder. Jack meets Gump, the oldest of the elves, and as such appears as the youngest. So old, in fact, that his skin had already begun to effervesce sparkles. Jack had grown tired searching for Lily, and passed out where he walked. Gump, fairy friend, Gump's friend found him on request from the Gump, for although the elf's range is great, not many can outseek a fairy folk. When she found him, he was covered in snow. She moved close to the ground, telekinetically pulled logs together, and blew fire into it. By the time Gump arrived, the snow had melted, and the soggy clothes he was wearing was about to wake him up. Gump was distraught, and Jack was confused, for he lived in the woods his whole life, and watched these elves cartwheeling and rolling in the corner of his seeking eyes. How could I not know you? How could I not know you? Do you live on the earth? We live over fruit and over gale. We live where the spiderwebs spell. Gump looked confused. You say a nature child doesn't know the Gump? No, that's not enough. Pray tell, did you come across anything else today? Anything not usual? Jack lowered his head, but not his eyes, except from shame. Lily touched a unicorn. Gump burst into rage, indicative to his age. The flames became thick, and the elves disappeared. Want not, tell not. He pointed at Jack bearingly. But I did it for love, he whispered, so low he doubted Gump even heard it, in his current state. But as the words ended from his voice, bubbles began burping out of Gump's. The fire turned from violent red and orange into soothing yellow that let the bubbles flicker rainbows from deep within themselves. Love? The Gump hop-stepped like a dance. That's not out of the darkness. Turning his head to the ground and walking in a vast circle. I see. Oh yes, wow, wonderful. Oh yeah. Oh, we mustn't forget that. Dozens of heads began revealing themselves from all around the camp. Elves of all ages and genders, silently looking up with an ear high. Jack couldn't help but feel that they weren't listening to Gump, who in turn, as Jack looked back towards, was nose to nose with him. What bell doesn't sound but angels spelled their way for it? Jack was took back, as the voice from all around whispered and giggled. I know. Shh. Gump shook his hands from his wayside. It only took a moment when the light returned to Jack's eyes. Flowers. Yes, bluebells. Call the day we die. No, Gump shouted, crying into the air as he fell, cringing in the air as he fell to the ground, began running in a circle in the same spot, yelling to himself, How could he know these things? A mortal nature child? Gump rolled to his back, sighed in relief, smiling. Long tongue, your finest wine. But it's... Yes, sure. Taking his hat off, his head revealing an ancient bottle that had been in his family longer than they could remember. Gump pointed his fingers into the air, revealing 4 empty acorns, cupping his fingertips. He passed them out as Longtongue filled them with the drips from the attempt for pour. You will be the champion. You will retrieve the Omicron back onto the unicorn's head. Champion? I know nothing of these things. Exactly. That's why you'll win. Because you will find the way the demons can't see. Jinx, take us to the Cave of Enchantment. He will need to be prepared. The horse was heavy, and although the weather was calm around the merry band, the demons were neck-deep in torments. Too bad the unicorn didn't understand. It was like how humans feel about the first days of spring after the cold was vanishing. If only it knew sunshine and flower pollen would act like a below-zero blizzard to them, and they would have to post up and wait for the unicorn to pass out again. The beast ruled it with anticipation. It remembered the memories of the first shadows separating from the light as the unicorn sprang out to life, and how all the first ones first clung around the rocks as the newly formed sun circled until the weak thing took rest at the first sunset, granting life to the minions his father enslaved after the broke free. But at the dawn of the next day, they learned a horrible lesson. The trolls turned to stone, the phantoms turned to ash. Even his great father gained a scar of memory. The mistake he would never make again, until he made the worst one. The unicorn's song had sung for the last time, and made his ears bleed, so he got the strongest, oldest allies, and hunted those horses for days, every night getting closer, until he had them. They were furious. The unicorns kicked and headbutted the evil right out of them. Only the father's spirit survived, being kept alive by the balance of evil itself. That was a long time ago, and the injured unicorn passed out. The weather cleared, and the sun rose for what could be nearing its last end. The beast watched the sun rise for the first time in a million-year life from the window of its dead tree kingdom. A tree that the walkers of the light who had witnessed it seemed to think it was dragged straight out of hell from the sheer size of its petrified wood. It stood 20,000 feet tall, and was very the reason no light could breach the lifeless, leafless carcass. The band of heroes arrived at the Cave of Enchantments, a place only a hero could enter. Inside he crawled past treasures beyond imagine, useless things that would not help as far as he thought. Finally he came to an iron fence where Jinx appeared, becoming a 3-foot tall girl with wings. He didn't know enough about fairy folk to realize that fairies don't need wings while an illusion, and that it takes 7 extra fairies to form human vocal cords so humans can understand them at all. No one can become, any one of them can become a human form at any time they choose, but they sound like bells to those who haven't been kissed by a fairy folk. which was exactly what she was after, but was denied. How dare you, mortal? What do you know of hearts? No heart burns like the heart of a fairy folk. Ours burn bright and as strong as any sun. How little you are before me, returning to a 1.5 inch tall, half a centimeter wide, minus the wings, humanoid under the bright light form. Don't be fooled by their size. They're as strong as a human athlete, and they're magic with a range of 100 feet radius around it. This might not seem far, but this might not seem far from a human angle, but put that on a body that travels 85 feet per second, it's treacherous. And so they headed out to the kingdom of the darkness. Where they arrived, the ground disappeared out from under them, sending them deep into the root systems locked behind the iron cage. They sat in the cages, watching the ogres hammer the live meat tender, a sight no eye should ever think. The fairy burst into sparkles, causing Gump and the other elves to sneer backwards. Although fairies were kind and helpful to the nature world, sprites were mischievous and menacing for all the living. Have I been with you such a short time that you don't trust me? A sparkle in the closest star. In the life of a sprite, Gump spit in malice. And you know it well. She shrugged her new formed body's shoulder, rolling her eyes, and disappeared to the blinding light of the fires. Moments later she reappeared with the key, releasing them, and crept around the mammoth, hiding the wandering nightmares. The four decided to split up, but they achieved nothing. Lily awoke in a firelit room. The floor was like a mirror. Her stomach gargled with hunger, but being she didn't know where she was, she avoided the food on the table. The room was quiet except for the crackling of the logs, which made her stomach hurt more. The eyes disappeared, turning to his father. I feel a hunger I have never felt. I have a pain I cannot bear. Father! He screamed, forgive me. I will take her to be mine. No, you child, you have to woo her. You need to change her into one of us first. Lily noticed a glare in her eyes and noticed a desk she hadn't noticed before. It was covered in diamond jewelry. Her brain was so overworked she actually felt good holding the necklace up to her in the mirror. When she noticed a shadow dancing behind her, she turned and found nothing in its place. Yet there it was, still dancing in the mirror, a slow-motion ballet, an empty dress wearing a shadow of sparkling coal. The motion mesmerized her, and as her eyes began fading out, she began swaying. The dress approached behind her, flooding over her like water. As the dress finished dressing her, doing a few more finishing off the dance, she fell into the deepest sleep of her life. Lily passed out only to wake up with this huge red bull's forearm being pushed inside of her. He raped her for 15 days non-stop. He tore her and bled her endlessly. She was in hell, and no human could survive for so long. Then, as if hell wasn't bad enough, she was covered in the diamonds from the desk, glistening the firelight, just like their sweat, and the floors, and his skin. Ah! She screamed endlessly. Longton got into a fight with a pack of orcs. Only a frying pan, he made short work out of them. Orcs are the tree roots turned alive, and guardians of this place. Finally, the Red Bull stood up and walked over to the table of rotting foods. He walked like a human with hairy hooved legs. His high horns were as black as his claws and eyes, except his eyes had red dots for pupils. She doubted she would ever get those eyes out of her mind. Her body was broken down, and she felt empty inside. Her skin felt like she was rolled over in a cactus. Watching him eat was all the motivation she needed to give her strength to stand. But when she seen the food, she began to cry. "We are one. You are already carrying the seed of destruction inside of you." Her body was too broken to even fall. "I only ask you to sit with me." The tears began to pour silently as her insides cringed and cramped. "Sit!" he screamed. "Or stand." The band of heroes realized the tree was rearranging itself, attempting to keep them from the girl or the unicorn. The bull had forgotten about. They began forming a line, always keeping the next in view, until finally found the place where they could hear her screams. "Ha ha ha ha!" the bull laughed from beyond the door. "Only the sun can destroy me now." Then, for some reason, the flash of Lily's necklace she was wearing back at their favorite spot, the light that hit him in the eyes as she was removing the ring from it. "I have an idea. Jinx, go tell the others to use every shiny thing they find to reflect the light from the sun back here." The sun's rays magic was too strong for even the tree to lie anymore. Jinx, unlock the door." But as the door opened, they were gone. They followed out the other door, arriving at a terrace overlooking the unicorn's prison. The beast of the tree had hooks and chains, holding the half-strength unicorn with pain of movement. Jack's arrow caught the bull in the shoulder. He turned to see who had the nerve, and as her blade was about to fall, the shine of the wedding gift to Jack gleamed her in the eyes, attached to the arrow still in the bull's shoulder. Her blade fell, causing the chain to splinter. The noise tore through the bull's ears, only to be ran through by the freed unicorn. The bull screamed in pain and backhanded the mare to the ground. Lights from the shields burst through the room like lightning, sealing him to the stone ground. When the unicorn aimed its horn at the wall began to separate as the void behind it grew. This was a void of the nothing, a darkness so deep even the bull can't exist in it. The pull was so strong, even the light. He dug his horns far into the stone floor, causing everything to crack. Gump stood up, listening to the bull curse, and said, "Isn't cursing for you supposed to sound like you're praising us?" The ground was now too weak from the horns, and lifted. Nothing on earth would let him hold them again. They retrieved the Omicron, and as it was placed back where it came from, it resealed, healing the unicorn. Instantly, the weight of the tree began to crack and crackle. They looked at each other, and the unicorn led the way, forcing the tree to instantly conform with each of its fast-paced steps. As they exited, Jack seen the area for the first time. Even though it was approaching twilight, the once eternal dark forest seemed to be as bright as the afternoon light. The forest seemed to become like that of a fantasy. Even the smell had turned sweet. The end.